Hello, my name is Ruben Hernandez, and I'm presenting on grade distribution and assessment for our sixth grade ELA department. I met with three teachers in our ELA department at our junior high and discussed what the assignment was as far as grade distribution and how they planned their grades on according to what they set out with their year at a glance, and of course, as their 9 week, we are a 9 week district, so we they set their 9 week unit over the time of what they'll be covering and use that to break down what assessments will be used throughout the 9 week and the semester, and which of those can be used for major grades or minor grades, and I'll go into detail that way. Being a 9 week at a glance, or 9 week at a glance. We start they start the year and they go ahead and look over previous scores from the previous year with the other students, analyzing previous assessments to see what needs they feel may be in preparation for the upcoming year with those students. During that 9 week all, as well, they're getting formal introduction. They're understanding what students they have, trying to get the ins and outs of how those students are going through, and they are also getting to know the students' needs when it comes to grading and grading procedures, and not procedures, but grading how they will assess those students. Then they start setting their WAG from what they've set from previous times, and they start creating their unit for the first 9 weeks, and they start preparing during that time for a UBA for their unit-based assessment. For they can use that as a major grade, and that falls into their grading policy, where they can input that as a major grade, which was a 40% weight as opposed to the minor grade, which is a 60%. But there's multiple minor grades, so that's why even though it is weighted heavier, it does take less because you are getting more and more of those grades in there. So the assigning of the grades, once they create their WAG and their 9 week at a glance, as well as their semester, they start to follow the district guidelines and what the district says can be used, as well as what they are planning to do, and making sure that they have enough grades per semester, per 9 weeks, plus per week. Our district policy states that each teacher must have 2 weeks, at minimum 2 weeks per grade, and one of those can be a major grade and a minor grade as well. And like I stated there, what they were weighted. They are mandatory to have 3 major grades over the entire 9 week grading period. And the three teachers that I did meet with said that they do use their UBA when they do have a testing day. And then we have SBAs also, which is almost like their star, is what they're trying to prepare for. So we will treat it like an actual testing day on campus, and everybody will go to testing rooms. They do that for all their subject. We spread it out so it's not a whole block of a week that's completely taken over, but they do use that as a major grade, and that's also a good indicator of checking for understanding of what they are covering and whether they are getting the outcomes that they've been looking for, and understanding if the lessons have been coming through, and if the assignments that are correlating correctly with, okay, he's struggling with this in class, it seems to be that he's still struggling with that on the test. Or we can see that there has been growth, that we knew someone's at one point during, maybe he was working on the grammar part of something and he had been struggling with it, and then on the SBA or the UBA, he seemed to have gotten a grasp on it, and hopefully they have already gotten over that. So as a teacher, when they look at as far as what they are putting in their assignments for minor grades, they can use quizzes, worksheets, whatever they're doing in group works, project, computer-based assessments. For the major grades would be the test, UBA, SBA. Could be a major project, could be summer reading, whatever they came off of the summer. They did use that for a summer reading to create a poster for the first 9 weeks. So it was interesting to see some of the posters that they did set up through the hall, and creating that for understanding and making sure that they were doing their assigned summer reading throughout the beginning of the year, and they had already completed it. That was important for them to see that they had completed that. Okay, important factors when you're creating your grade distribution. are the number of days in your 9 weeks, the amount of your time, and adjusting your schedule if you want to do it. For example, if you wanted to have the grading of, say, a quiz, was that going to be a whole period quiz? Is it going to be a test per se? And making sure that you're adjusting things, because if you do have daily objectives, like they have a starter, once they get in, they have to write. Especially in this ELA, they get in there. She gives them a prompt. They write for 10 minutes. She usually goes through those at the end of the week to make sure that they're writing at least about a good paragraph about whatever the prompt may be. A lot of the prompts that they do are very broadly based, but just to get the student to actually participate in writing. The biggest factor in creating success with ELA is to making sure that students are writing and learning the basic grammar skills as they are trying to reach out on their own, because eventually they are writing and typing, but writing writing an essay or a small word response for their tests come star time. Okay, so adjusting that to make sure that they are given adequate amount of time if they are having a test, making sure that they are prepared for a quiz, making sure they are taken care of in that. And again, because if you're taking a quiz, those will be used for a minor grade. And again, if it's a test, it's an all-period thing. Then obviously that day you wouldn't be taking a starter or a closer, or you won't be lecturing. They're prepared that day is a test. You're going to give them the ample amount of time to get that test completed. And so if that's going to be a major grade, you want to make sure that you are following the policy, which is making sure that they have the time and the assessment time and arranged preparations to take a whole test for that class. So testing procedures are, obviously we do test in classrooms, and which is where I'm talking about. I'm talking about the major grades that will be used, which would be UBAs, which is the unit-based assessment, and the SBAs, as well as any tests in the classroom. So we've taken 2 already, and so we've had an SBA and a UBA, and so they've used those. Usually they use them in our progress report time, where they'll get 1 major grade from there, and they can use those pretty much throughout the semester. So as you can see from pretty much our district policy, a lot of the grades that we are processing throughout the 9-week period a lot of them are minor grades, and a lot of it is just basic comprehension skills with multiple checkpoints as they are going through their WAG or their 9-week at a glance, so that way they can make sure and keep having checkpoints to see what they are following. As far as the grading policy, I will go into as to what they are given adequate time to make up or anything like that. I'll go over those in just a second. So the grading procedures or minor grades must be completed within 72 hours and posted. So if it's a simple worksheet, the district says that they need to complete it and post it within those 72 hours to make sure that parents are given adequate amount of time, students are given adequate amount of time to make sure that their grades are followed through. Major grades, depending if it's an SBA, if it's a test, if it's a written response test, it can take. They do give some leeway to say you have a week to get those posted, especially if it's an essay. It could be, if it's multiple choice, that's a little bit different. But if it is a written response or anything of that matter, where it has to be read and graded and checked for grammar, thought process, and basic involvement of the essay or whatever they're trying to do, the district will give time to teachers for them to get those grades up and posted. And it could be a matter of, you can tell the student later after it got graded and then post it within that time frame afterwards. But it also is responsibility of the student for any absences and makeup work to ask the teacher for that. The teacher doesn't necessarily have to go and say, hey, you weren't here, this is what you need to do. It's the responsibility of the student, as well as it is the responsibility for the parent to see that if they are out, they need to make sure, hey, parents do communicate with us very well. We use Parent Square, so our parents are very much involved and can be quickly a message to our teacher. I know as a coach myself, I constantly get Parent Square messages over athletic and even PE, and I teach a keyboarding class as well. So even within that, we are able to get grading. We are able to get messages directly, and we try to answer those as quick as possible for all of our parents, as quickly and adequate as possible. But it's a two-way street for all of us, for parents, students, and teachers. So that way we do make the best opportunity to make sure that if a student does miss, they are given ample opportunity to go and complete their work. And as far as recommendation for needs of improvement, I think they're with the with the grading, the assessments that we have. I think there should be more opportunity for identifying the needs of students, and I don't mean necessarily just in grading and how it is. I mean just in as we get to know our students, and of course we get that from our SPED department and our 504 department to make sure if there's any needs that we can help and assess. And it could be little things. It could be ample time. It could be a one-on-one. Little things like that will make the difference. When you come in from the previous year, it's important. I would say compare previous scores from state assessments to see what has grown with the student, especially for that little time frame of that 9 weeks or even shorter than that, what they have improved on. Using the help and adjusting for lessons for students to succeed to show growth. Having it all on a calendar the way they do have in a nice 9 week period, it shows where they should be on track. And if you have a student that's struggling, you may have to reteach. That's why we do offer tutorials and imperative time frame for them to come and catch up and make sure that they are understanding. The grading policy is really broad, but it's not difficult to understand for our students and for our teachers and for our parents, which like I said, is a matter of how many grades we put in, a matter of major grades that are put in, and also taking into account as teachers to making sure that grades are input at a timely manner, so that way parents and students can see whether they are getting everything completed. I will say from personal experience, I've had teachers, as a coach, I've had teachers not do that before, and I've had players I've looked over, following all their grades, and at one point I think they said grades were due at 4 o'clock, and I had a student's printout or a team printout, and we had 2 kids that were failing, and this was at 3:45, and I'd only seen about 2 kids on there that were failing, and I didn't know if they were going to make it or not. However, when I printed out the next day, just so I could have it in my files, the 4 o'clock had cut off. I had 4 other, or I believe about 5 other kids that were now failing. And like I said, I'm not one to go to a teacher and say, why did he fail? What did he do? But I did have some parents reach out to me and ask me what answers I could give. I said, well, I can reach out to the teacher and ask him what happened. Well, and I did tell them, I said, but the best response would be for you to reach out on your own. And parents did, and they pretty much were going by, well, what does the policy say? Because as a parent, I can see where this is important to make sure that we have policy and everything put into place correctly. Because as a parent, if I'm checking my son's grades and checking, and I go, okay, he's doing decent, he's passing, he's making sure everything's done, but then 10 minutes later, you dropped 6 grades in, and now he's failing. And that's what did happen at that time. So they did have to basically go back and say, okay, well, when were these grades due? When were they input? And when were they supposed to be done? So in doing so, like I said, I didn't push for this, but it was a matter of the parents saying, well, what is the policy? And they went through that. We did get those kids back, and I think that goes to more on the teacher's part, where they need to make sure that they do have everything timely input, so that way parents are looking and checking, and they're not surprised when, well, how is he failing when he was passing till about essentially 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. So those are the things I think we just need to improve as far as making sure that we do have teachers input in a timely manner, and making sure that parents see that and can be up to date with their students' participations in classes. So those are my plans. Those are my thoughts on what our district at Santa Fe ISD can improve on our grading policies and grading procedures. Thank you. So in conclusion, I would just like to add that the teachers that I did meet with give me ample time to go over what we were trying to do as far as grade distribution for how they approach it towards the ELA department and for the 6th graders. And I think the fact that they set out the year at a glance, and then they approach it as a 9-week quarter and another 9-week, and they approach that throughout the year. They set vital checkpoints through those, and then once they figure out what they want to be learning, I think it's important that when they distribute those grades, they're distributing grades evenly, that the students are beneficial and they can actually comprehend what they are learning. And by analyzing previous data and SBA and UBA assessments throughout the year, I think though making those major grades are important because it gives us an idea of where they really are. And I think by making the other classroom grades being that they are uh, um, not the major grades, but being minor grades and not having as much weight, it allows them to be successful at what they're doing. So by using that information and giving the best possibility outcome for those students, I think is really truly beneficial to them. And in following with our district policy, I think it's imperative that it leads to communication with parents. It leads to parents being up to date, students being up to date, especially when there are any extracurriculars involved. But I think it's mostly important because parents or students aren't caught off guard by following district policy and making sure a certain amount of grades are there and they are up to date. And I think those are the biggest factors when it comes to creating that for our students. Thank you.